Well, hello everyone. Welcome to Truth Talk, which is a part of the ministry of Truth to Hear. We're going to wait a little while because it takes a little bit of time for us to go live and everybody to catch on and show up. So we're going to just wait just a second to make sure that everybody gets their notifications. Please feel free to chat while you're listening, and we can answer any kind of questions you might have, share some thoughts or comments that you might think about while we're talking. So feel free to join us in our chat, all right? We have covered here on Truth Talk a lot of things in the last 6 months, social, economic issues, racial issues, COVID-19, of course, and some political agendas, but not mainly political. But we would be amiss if the day after the election, and we still don't have a president elected, to not cover this, to not talk about the impact that this election, this voting process has had on us individually and our states. I am so thankful that we have people in our panel here tonight that are from different parts of the country. And that way they can go ahead and share what's going on in their state. So first I want to introduce who's joining me tonight in the panel. Familiar faces to those who know the show, and to those who do not, I'd like them to give you a brief introduction of themselves. So we're going to start first with Bill Kaufman. Bill, thank you for coming to the show, and I look forward to having a great talk. Bill is a historian. He knows history more than I could ever imagine, so I believe he's got a lot to add to our conversation.
Well, thank you, Melanie, and thank you for having me. Yeah, my name is Bill Kaufman. I'm a California person. I was born and raised in California. I still live here. I left for a few years when I was in the United States Army. They didn't let me stay home. They sent me all over the place. After I got out of the Army, though, I moved back home and to California. Met a woman named Barbara, married her. We had 5 kids. They're all girls, by the way. We have a granddaughter now also. I'm a retired deputy sheriff, but I still work for the Sheriff's Department in the same capacity for 960 hours a year. And then I can't work more than 960 hours. So that's my experiences real quick in the nutshell.
All right, and thank you. And we have Bill's Facebook down below in the screen, because he does Bible studies, wonderful, wonderful Bible studies. And even tonight, after the show, join him at his Facebook for that study. And the next guest we have is David Buckland. David, well.
Hi, I'm David Buckland. I am a New Mexican resident. That is a state. Some people don't seem to understand that yet, but I, like Bill, I spent most of my life in California, and I finally escaped. I have been married almost for 7 years, got 2 grown boys. A jack of all trades and a master of none. I was very privileged, thanks to our hostess, to enjoy a 5-year run as an actor. I got to do everything I could possibly wish for in Hollywood. It was amazing, and because of that, I was able to step away from it. I didn't want fame; I wanted the experience. I am now an author, published author, and it was semi-autobiographical. But my hope is that people who have similar experiences will find hope through finding out that there are hundreds and thousands of people in the world who have survived the challenges. I'm not going to go into that here because I'm not trying to create drama. But if you're interested, go on Amazon and look for A Holy Made Man. I think it's there on the screen. And what I learned from God is that the problem I thought was the core of everything was actually just, it was almost a symptom of the fact that I had bad character and bad parental upbringing and didn't know how to treat people, et cetera, et cetera. And so for the last 30 years, I've been willing to let God bring mentors into my life and teach me. And so now I'm a person I don't even recognize. I'm not saying I'm perfect, because I'm certainly not. I got a long way to go, but I'm at a point where I can actually enjoy who I am, and my friends are real. And that's priceless.
You know, David, when you say that you found out the core problem because everything was just symptoms, I think that's what's going on with us today in America. Is there's character flaws in what's going on in America. There are symptoms that something greater is breaking apart. And I think this election and the voting process shows us just how great, we are divided in America. It shows us how great that we have lost sense of community and are looking at just one-sided issues and thought processes. So I look forward to
one more statement. Really, the crux of the whole thing is a willingness to be self-accountable. It's not a fatal, It's not a fatal thing to admit you're wrong, to admit that you need to change course. That is the best thing you can do if it becomes obvious that that's part of the problem. And that's, I think, the only way your life will improve.
And on that note, we're going to introduce Brandy Hunt, who is a publisher and author. And a lot of her books have to do with, realizing where you came from and realizing your flaws and growing and inviting people to grow with you. So welcome, Brandy. You're the publisher of On the Right Track Company. Introduce yourself, please.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. And how can I follow up such amazingness like Bill and David? But I'll try. I am from Greenville, South Carolina. I was raised between North and South Carolina. My father was a soldier. He was in the Army also, Bill. And so I'm 40 years old with a 20-year-old daughter. My hat goes off to you, Bill. When you said 5 of them, no, 1. One daughter who's now 20 years old. So I'm empty nested and just, living life and loving it and just, trying to find my new track. My company's name is On the Right Track, and I help people write books, yes, but stay on the right track in both life and business. And so if you want to write a book, you think you want to write a book, you're not sure, you can call me anyway. And by the end, I'll convince you that you should write the book. If you don't want to be an author, it's okay. You can be a messenger. You can call yourself whatever you want to call yourself, but just write the book. So thank you for allowing me to be here.
And tonight, our topic for tonight is the election 2020, the aftermath. And I say the aftermath, but I don't think we've seen it yet. I think we're still in the process of finding out the answer. So you can't really have an aftermath before you have an answer. But, there's still, at least here in Los Angeles, there is an aftermath for some people, because this whole process and everything, as we'll talk about, has affected daily lives. It's interrupted things on a small scale compared to what we thought it would. So my thing is this, and chime in, panelists. Do we go back to just how divided the Trump versus Biden conflicts have been? How do we now, no matter who wins, whether Trump or Biden wins, how do we bring people to say, okay, you rooted for your guy for how many years or months, you promoted them, you talked about him, but now that President A is president, right? Now that he is the president, whichever one it is, how do we now start unifying the hate? How do we dismantle that among our people? I've heard outrageous stories about family members getting into brawls over them. I've heard a story about a mother dying, and the brother wouldn't tell the sister, because they were opposite versus Biden supporters. So the daughter totally missed the funeral, didn't even get to go, even though her mother was dead, because they argued about who should be president. I've heard stories about grandparents being disowned for voting for the opposite person of their children. So how do we, no matter who is president, how do we and can we be a source of unity, and let's get behind the president, because it doesn't matter who it is, the president needs prayer, the president needs support. So I'm going to ask that question to you guys.
Well, in my opinion, politics has been divisive throughout, long before America was here. And if you can read about, I do like history a great deal. And I read about it all the time. I'm kind of a nerd about it, really. I read history books for fun. And that's kind of weird. I get it. But I just really, I can seem to really put myself in the shoes of people that lived before me. And so it's not new that people are divisive. We did something different, though, in America, and at least in the 20th century. We seem to kind of rise up higher than most people that lived before us and say, well, your guy won this time, but my guy's going to win next time. And that was okay. My grandparents, one was a Republican, my grandmother, I guess, they both died before I was born. But my grandmother was a Republican and my grandfather was a Democrat. And my dad said he remembered being a little boy and they said, well, let's get up and go cancel each other's vote, as they went off to the poll. And I think the only way you can do that is the idea of liberty and freedom being something personal to you, and you allow other people to have it. And if you take it from them, they're not going to give it back to you. So my grandparents apparently knew how to do that. Once again, I never knew them, but they apparently knew how to do it. And we don't know how to do that right now. So if the person that I did not vote for, which in this show doesn't matter who I voted for, that's not the point. The person I did not vote for wins, then I do need to support them with prayer. I do need to be polite and kind to the people who voted for him. I do need to, I'm not going to say like jump up and down and share their victory. If you don't want that other person, that's not going to happen. But you can certainly show a tremendous amount of respect. And that was given before, at least in the 20th century. Not so much right now. So, or in 2016 at all either. So I would say that that's a personal thing. You can reach out to somebody who is opposed to you and treat them with respect, and I'll bet you'll get it back. That's just my opinion. But beyond that, I don't know how much more we can do as individuals.
Yeah, I agree. It is about not being offended in the beginning. If I know, you don't have to get into the conversation in the first place, but if someone comes around me and they're boasting or being arrogant, or, I was in a situation in an appointment last week, and there was 3 other people in the same room, of course, 6 feet away, but they were just mocking one of the soon to be elected presidents or one of the candidates, and making fun of that person. And in my flesh, I was offended at just their demeanor, their conversation. And in that moment, I could see myself going up to them and saying, listen, that's where you're saying, just stop, don't give in to that. And just, don't involve yourself in the hate conversation. Even if you think you're doing the right thing, stay out of the hateful conversations and then talk to them about peaceful situations, that it's okay. I don't mind if you vote for them.
Let me say one scripture that I think that apply here, and then I'd like to hear what David and Brandy say too. But there's a scripture that does say, as much as lies within you, live peacefully with all men. as much as you can. That doesn't mean what they can do. That doesn't mean they have to treat you with respect. You need to do that for them. You get it back usually if you'll do that. You don't always get it back, but you'll get it back often. And
Yes.
so as much as lies within you, live peacefully with other people, even when you disagree with them, because you're gonna. My gosh, you're gonna. Of course you're gonna.
Mm-hmm.
So,
David,
anyway.
Brandy, anything you want to add to that?
I do. I'm almost 10 years older than Bill, about 15 more than you, and wonderful Brandy here is younger than my oldest child. And that's only to say that it doesn't cover it anymore to say that America has lost its innocence. It's that we're so far beyond that. It's really hard for me to comprehend where we're at. I never thought I'd see a day where people would wish people in power would die a horrible death, or you can give all kinds of examples. The American dream, in the sense that we were able to disagree, to be polite, like Bill said, to be polite, to be respectful of one another, regardless of how far apart our ideologies were. That's all out the window.
Right.
And I'll just say, our topic is elections. It's been hard for me the last, I guess it would be 8 years, maybe 12. You and I were talking about it last night. If the mail is all a big factor in when ballots are even received, much less opened and counted, then all the falderall on television last night was a complete waste of time, because we just don't know.
Right.
We just don't know what the results are yet. So what did we do? We sat there and watched for 7-8 hours while people made up stuff, and it was amazing, because they're making projections. They're saying things in the West when they don't even know what's going on in the Midwest. Elections are, from a public viewpoint, they're not reliable, and that just breaks my heart. It's nothing like I grew up with, and maybe I was naive. Maybe I was pleasantly naive, but now we seem to be far beyond awake. We seem to be living in unreality, to sum it up.
Yeah, and so we're going to go into that. We have a night where no one was elected president, right? No one's president yet, elected president. Where do you put your faith? Is your faith in this election process? Mail-in votes, you have voting at the voting site, but all the states, there's a lot of places, and of course, I do refer to Bill on this because he's more knowledgeable about history, where you have different time frames. Like here in California, the mail-in votes don't have to be counted until 17 days, so that's the 20th. So if you elect a president now, here's a question I'm getting asked a lot. How then do they say, well, what about the mail-in votes in California? So my understanding, and I want to hear, how do you have faith in a system that is saying who's going to be president before all of these deadlines? And then, can we even do that? Are we going to wait till the very last vote counts? Or are we going to, as a society, react to something before that? Does that make sense? Go ahead, Brandy.
Of course, we're going to react to it before the actual information comes out, because that's what they want us to do. This whole year has been a year of not responding in intelligence and logic and things that make sense. It's all been a pop off this year. Like, oh, there's a virus. and now everybody's everywhere. And oh, the virus is leaving, it's coming, it's going, it's here, it's there. That's been all year long. And so I don't think that the delay of the votes was by happenstance, or that they spent 7 or 8 hours. We're all home. We're not out in the world. So why wouldn't they care to not take 7 or 8 hours to, at the end of the night, go, ha, gotcha. We won't be giving you the, it's like this whole 3 or 4 year span has been like a reality TV show. And you're just watching it unfold. I think the people's response is very abrasive because of the times that we're in. So it's like, y'all told us one thing, and now you're telling us something totally different. It's like being lied to by your parents. It's like, hey, I'm gonna bring you a cheeseburger home, and then they bring in fried chicken, and you like, wait, I waited all day for a cheeseburger, and oh, but it's food. You should be happy because I'm giving you food, and I think they're feeding us what they want us to have, but it's not. None of it is true.
Okay,
Maybe partially.
I just have to
I'm
say
gonna
one thing
show
for
this.
that.
Hold on, one
I want
second.
hamburger
Sure.
or I want fried chicken. If my parents brought me either of those, I'd have been happy. My parents brought me something healthy.
We got a comment from Spartan Flow that says, "What do you think will happen? What do we think is going to happen when they announce who's elected president? You have the president's campaigns on both sides already saying that they have more than enough legal teams all across the country ready and willing to start, submitting files, submitting, lawsuits. How then are we as the people supposed to react to what they say is going to be our president when their own campaigns are not going to accept it? What? So to answer Spartan Flow, what do you think will happen?
Well, nobody knows, obviously. The process is going to be that both candidates are, whichever is declared 270 is going to say it's done. And then the other one, it doesn't matter which one. The other one's going to say, no, it's not done, and I'm going to sue. And that really is what's going to happen. There's no doubt in my mind, either one of them that isn't declared the winner is going to sue. And then that has to start in each state, because what you said earlier, Melanie, California has 17 days, another state has different things. They're all run by their own rules. I know some of the states were able to start counting 2 weeks early on the absentees. Other people are not. So every state runs its own election system. So you start suing in that state, and then that goes up to the federal state at the federal level, and then it goes on to the Supreme Court, which it will end up there. I mean, it has to. I don't see how it can't. Did that in 2000 with Gore and Biden, and it made it to the Supreme Court because of Florida's hanging chads. So it pretty much has to do that. If it would have been a blowout one way or the other, that wouldn't happen, but it's pretty close, and so it's going to be that way. Now, just to finish it off, and I'll let everybody else pipe in, but if that doesn't work and it's still up in the air whenever you're supposed to see the president next year, then that goes to the House of Representatives, and the Democrats control the House this time. The Republicans picked up, I think, 6 seats, maybe. I don't remember exactly, but they didn't take so Nancy Pelosi will probably be the speaker again, and then they'll vote, and that will be for that. That's how it's set up. If you can't get 270, then it'll go to the House of Representatives, and of course they're going to vote for their party. Who's ever in power, their guy's going to get there. It's that simple. So
I appreciate that.
That's just what will happen. I don't know how the outcome's going to be.
Right. And I think that's information that most of us don't know. Like what happens if January does come along and there's nothing settled. So I appreciate you educating us on what actually happens in the process, that, they're going to vote their party. The Democrats are the main party, so therefore they'll vote their man in. So we need to be mindful of that. But So have you ever,
By the way, I want to say that if the Republicans were in power, they would do the same thing. So I'm not picking on either group. Whoever has the power is going to seat their person, obviously.
right. And it makes sense. Has there ever been a time in history that election night has come and gone and we don't have a president?
If I may dovetail off of that, what we've been seeing through all this COVID activity and lots of other ways on a smaller leading up to progression over the several decades, actually, seems like the real goal of whomever it is that's pulling the strings behind the scenes is to foment chaos. You know, I mentioned the circus of last night. There was nothing accomplished by that except, you know, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? You know, what if this happens? What if that happens? Who cares until it happens? Just give us the news, you know, and so they're creating, in my opinion, a lose-lose situation in the country where it doesn't matter what happens because the two parties are, and when I say parties, I mean chains of thought, whatever, at least two, if not three or four groups of people are going to be unhappy for possibly different reasons. But, you know, it's clear to me that there's unfortunately a fair amount of people out there who are just going to start shooting anybody they choose for whatever reason. Am I making sense? That, it's like, there's a pretty house over there. Let's go break the windows. You know, I mean, there's just a complete moral breakdown, lapse, building in our society.
You know, David, that brings us to the point I want to talk about is what's going on in your cities, in your states, because like David said, there's been a lot talking here in LA anyway of what was going to happen, rioting, shooting, all that David just mentioned, you know. Nothing major has happened in LA. There was a lot of people arrested last night on the street corners and standing in intersections because they wanted to make sure nobody would start something, that they weren't going to gather in large numbers. So there was a lot of people escorted by police off the street. The buildings are boarded. All right, Beverly Hills, Rodeo Drive, you can't get there, and boarded. You know, in downtown LA, same thing, blocked and boarded. So they anticipated that there would be some unrest. But I'm shocked because David just said he expects people to be. I don't understand that. How is there unrest? Because we had an election. We've had an election for how many years? There's never been where you have to board up your city. I understand I was called yesterday and told that transportation trucks of supplies are not allowed in big cities until this is over. But how in the world did we get here, and how do we get out of here when we think we're the enemy? Because the wrong guy, in my eyes, didn't get voted in. Bonnie Trailer, she is a panel on our host, and you know, because of me, I didn't have time to reach out to her to come on today. But she's listening, and she said here, the Trump campaign filed suits in 4 states today.
Wow.
Already filed suits. I know Michigan is doing a recount, and they're going to count by hand again. So this is not something that's going to go away overnight. It's not going to go away in a couple of weeks. I think we are looking at a long process to the next presidency.
It has to be expedited, though. And that, once again, I think it will be. But one of the reasons I think that we didn't experience much in the way of violence, because we were set up for that in law enforcement last night, and we didn't have near as much as we thought, was there wasn't a declared victor. I mean, they actually stopped counting. I'd never heard of that happening. They stopped counting. And I was like, that can't happen. First I thought I heard it wrong, and because I've never heard of such a thing. But there was no declared victor, so therefore there was nothing. Your guy might still win. Yay. I don't know. So I think that's why. And since this is getting so drawn out, I only thought of this today. I don't know this, but it may actually quell some of the violence that would have happened had somebody been announced last night. Mm-hmm. Because steam wears off. You start like, I really care. And then pretty soon later, you're like, well, I kind of care. And then a few weeks later, you're like, oh, I don't even care. So it could happen that way. And I don't have any idea of that. I'm just saying that I think it would have been going off a lot more had someone been declared a victor last night that other people didn't like.
And here's my question to that. If the news media and the campaigns fuel the conversation by keeping it alive, by pointing things against the other opponent, right? If Trump says things about Biden and Biden says things about Trump and like we hear, suits are already being filed, is that going to keep it calm, or is it going to keep us bursting until we pop? Brandy, what do you think?
I think what David said hopefully will happen, that the longer it takes, people will be like, oh, I was really, kind of like it reminds me of sports, Cowboys and Panthers or whoever, and people have like taken that mentality to the presidency when it's totally different. But and then I'm like David said, significantly younger, but I've always heard Democrat was black and Republican was white. And so now I feel like that's the odd against it. It's like the black people against the white people, or white people against the black people, red against blue. It's never been, this country's not really ever been unified. So to go back to something that we really didn't have this whole year, and this is what I said on our other show, I think it's just revealing what always was, and people are showing their true colors, people who you didn't think would say a thing or do a thing. And I wanted to answer the other question you asked, which was, where do I put my faith? In the same place it was before I voted. Because at the end of the day, and the word does declare that he's over all the kingdoms and all the governments, and the governments will be on his shoulders. So whoever wins, he already knew who was going to win. So why should I get myself in an uproar because my guy didn't win? My guy would actually be a girl. So if I had a choice, I put a couple of women up there. So, because we ain't really had a woman yet. So, if it was, but it's not my world. And I think people need to realize that this thing has already been rigged somewhere in heaven. So, how do we unify? I think we need to start over. Like, how does everything in our country get upgraded except our government? Why are we voting the same way we voted 200, 100 years ago? How that's something that I would like to know. Why are we not able to upgrade our government when everything else can be upgraded?
That's right.
I hope that answered your question.
It did more. And that question was posed to someone on CBS News last night. Is we can do surveys on our phone for just about everything. They can do an Amber Alert goes to everybody in the state, but we can have a voting app that says, "Hey, put in your choices," and it automatically gets sent in.
Done. Yeah.
Hey, I don't know. I'm not that person. But what I do want to go, we do have to take. I want to give Bill the last comment. He leaves to go and do a Bible study, and we showed you where he is. And there is a correction. It's 3 states. Trump filed suit against 3 states, not 4. So there's a correction there. Thank you, Bonnie, for correcting that. But Bill is getting ready to go on a Bible study, and you can join him at this facebook.com/Bill and Barbara Kaufman. Please join at 7:00. Sorry, Bill. I don't want them to leave me to go to you, but amazing Bible study. So he is going to be off to do that. Thank
on
you,
my
Bill, for
Facebook
coming
Live.
on.
And
And
I agree with what Brandy said, that I don't want to paint a rosy picture of the past. It wasn't, roses in the past. It was not. You go back to the 1800s, there was fist fights and even shootings on the in Congress. Okay, so this idea that this is contentious is new. It's not true, and that's how I started saying that. However, we did get into a time in the 20th century where it seemed like that was going along fairly well as far as respecting other people. My father was in the Navy in World War II, and he told the story of he never voted for FDR. He didn't like him. He didn't like the guy. But he got into a fist fight in Australia with a British sailor who was putting down FDR. And he goes, hey, I can put him down all I want, but and I'll say it the way he said it, but not with the exact words. He goes, that's a SOB, but he's my SOB, and you're not allowed to talk bad about it. And he got into a physical fist fight in a bar in Australia in World War II with a British soldier over a president that he did not vote for, wouldn't vote for, but he was going to stand up for him. And
Good.
I hope I'm that way for the rest of I learned that from my dad, and I hope I'm that way for the rest of my life. That's all. I think it's the best way we could do as Americans. A little Pollyanna-ish. I don't think it's going to happen for everybody, but it would be great if it did, I think.
it would be. It would be. And we're going to say goodbye to Bill and continue the conversation.
Bye, Bill.
And so we're going to continue the conversation now and talk about some of the things that they're proposing, that what happens, like I know, like they're saying trucks have not been able to go into large cities. So supplies might be lagging again. Places are boarded up. So businesses are closed up for a while again. That means people have been, not working while the places are boarded up. So what are some solutions we can do within our own cities, within our own towns, to help each other stay calm and get through this?
Do you think people really want to stay calm that are not staying calm?
No,
Yeah.
I don't. But I think that there's innocent people that
Right.
is going to be affected by this. And
Yeah.
those are the people that we need to say, what suggestions, what can we give them? I know that there are people living in fear
Right.
of what's going to happen. Like even today, nothing has happened, right? But they're anticipating because the media is saying, and you have roadblocks and boarded up buildings. It's like something has to happen. We planned for it. So, I want to say this, sometimes we don't need to listen to the media. We need to look at outside our own windows and see what's
Right.
really happening. Because one, that will dispel some of it. If you tell me, I've had people call me from South Carolina, and even David, when he was driving from New Mexico, oh, I don't know if I want to be in LA. Melanie, get out of LA. Come, go somewhere else. And I'm looking out my window, I'm like, there's nothing happening.
Right.
But because of the news and all the anticipation, people called me up scared to even have me stay in my own home. But it's peaceful and calm. There's nothing happening.
Right.
So what if something does happen? Go ahead, Brandy.
Again, I think it's one of those fear tactics. I personally, I'll tell you. So here, I'm the same. I'm looking out the window. I called you yesterday and told you I'm going to get some groceries and gas just in case anything happens. Better safe than sorry. But I'm not in fear, like anxious fear. I think there's a fine line between readiness and anxiety. I didn't overspend at the grocery store. I didn't spend $250 because that's not my budget. If that's your, but it's just me. And so, I spent my little grocery money. I got enough food for a week or two, something that I would normally do. I filled up my gas tank. I would normally do that, but I didn't do it in, oh my God, the world is going to fall apart tomorrow. I don't think that's what's going to happen. I do think there are going to be people that are upset. I don't think this is the race war. People are expecting a race war to happen tomorrow, and they keep inciting it. It's like, oh, this is going to be, it was coronavirus at first. I don't know if you remember, people were going out to buy guns, and they're like, this is going to be it. This is, and I think they're preempting what the Bible says is sure to happen, but let's not do it before our time. let's not just go out and buy all the guns because you're upset that your president, like, we really gonna fight about something that is really not in our control. Because if you really want to change something, change your community. We all have the option to stand on the corner and shout whatever your message is. All the corners are free. Like, literally, you could go out there. You might got to pay a little in LA. I don't know. In South Carolina, it's like $25. You can be on the corner and shout all the messages you want all day. Do you really want to make a difference, or do you just want to make noise? And that's my question. Do you really want to make a difference? And that's what I would ask people who really do want to listen. Well, what else am I supposed to do? You know, this man didn't vote for Trump, or this woman didn't vote for Biden. What did you do in your community today? Whose life did you change? What juvenile did you help not commit a crime? What woman did you take to the grocery store? Because if we're really going to wait for our president, we've been waiting 80 years for a president to change the world, that we really can change on our own by starting in our own household. So that's what I would tell people: starting your own household and then branch your way out. Whatever the rules and the laws are going to be, they're going to be. They're not going to change them just because I say something. But if we all band together and we start changing our communities, that's how the world is changed. They'll look around and go, "Oh, did you hear what Brandy did in Greenville, South Carolina? Come call her up to the White House. We need to see how she made that change." I'll be ready. And so that's how change is incited. It's not anger and rage. And you mentioned, you know, my book, Dealing with the Hand I Was Dealt, is what that talks about. You're mad about something that you really can change, but you got to be positive in the change. Anger changes nothing. Rage changes nothing. It just, you know, all these things that I've been through, people ask me, how did you stay so calm? I never seen anger change a thing. I've never seen throwing anything or fighting somebody or shooting something. Never seen it change. Exactly. But once I changed me and then moved forward and got a different perspective. Okay, God, why did this happen? Oh, okay, you wanted me to go in a different direction? Okay, I need a new perspective. So what I would tell somebody if they really did come to me and say, oh my gosh, the world is gonna fall apart tomorrow. Well, don't you fall apart. You let the world do what it's going to do, but don't you fall apart, because the Bible does tell us there will be wars and rumors of wars around us, but that the chosen will still be here. So if you believe you one of the chosen, then you need to stand flat-footed and listen to the Holy Spirit and do what the Holy Spirit is telling you to do, not what the news is telling you to do, not what the podcast is telling you to do, but literally what the Holy Spirit and Holy Spirit-filled people who aren't panicking are telling you to do.
And you know, Brandy, that's where we want to go. You know, if what we did a year ago, before COVID, before all the social changes, before all the Biden versus Trump arguments and conflicts, how did we live our life? We lived our life in communities together, helping one another, asking about each other, seeing about each other, being there for one another. It wasn't, well, did you disinfect today? You don't have the right mask on today. Right. Who are you voting for? Now we're only focused in society about the differences and the conflicts and the division. So we have to get back. Listen, there might be another unintended lack like we had when COVID first happened, because stores are closed, trucks aren't getting into major cities. Why not, instead of focusing on that, be part of the solution? Mm-hmm. So if you like you said, you don't have a $250 food budget. If stores close down or shipments don't come in, what are you going to do if you don't have the money?
Right.
Here's the solution. Why don't people who know each other, you know, you and your 5 gals, David and his family, or just a group of people that you trust, Said, let's do a food bank. Once a month, you put in, or once a week, whenever you get paid, whatever you can budget, put in $10. You get 5 people with $10, it's $50 worth of groceries. And then you buy up the supplies you need. And then whenever someone runs out, they have the provision of the whole. You know, and I know this might sound weird, but if we did that and we were prepared for COVID, you know how many people wouldn't have had to been in food lines?
Right.
Because there would have been a community food bank of people they trust. One person can house the paper products. One person that has an extra refrigerator can house the refrigerator foods. You know, you can separate it out. So, you know, think about something like that, like a community food bank that's within your reach that you can give to, not something that's, you know, I say community, but it's kind of a personal food bank, isn't it? With you and your trusted people. Also, you know, come up with solutions, help each other. You know, there's so much division, and we don't know who the president is. It could be weeks before we know who the president. I've heard a lot of people tell me today that they don't expect it before January. And we heard Bill say what would happen if in January we still don't have an elected president. Are we going to hold our breath until then? We've already held our breath since last March. We can't allow the media and the politics of this government to cause us to continue to hold our breath. We need to go back to where we were before all this, and that is internally. Back to God is still on the throne. He never left. So I still need to seek him first and then follow what he tells me every day, regardless. David, what do you have to say?
I've been wanting to say this. It's a little out of context now, but as you know, I'm always looking for base issues. What's really going on behind the 2 or 3 layers of things that are catching our attention? Why are they happening? And I wish Bill was still here, because there's a principle in the Bible, and I don't know exactly where it's at, but basically implies that if the king is righteous and administers justice, et cetera, then his kingdom is stable. If he's treacherous, if he's unreliable, if he's just as liable to cut your head off as to reward you for anything, then everything is contentious. There's suspicion and fear around every corner, and then this model was exemplified for me in the Air Force. You know, so the quality of the officer trickles down. The men, regardless of their personal, the men and women, regardless of their personal personalities, will tend to go one way or the other. They'll treat each other poorly or well, depending on what they can expend. I was really disappointed in both candidates recently. And of course, we don't know how accurate the news is, but so we've got one candidate who says, if the other guy wins, I will not give him a peaceful transition. And, you know, that was just childish. That was petulant. I mean, I could understand it, but it was just wrong. And then more recently, the other candidate says, if I win, I'm not going to wait until January 20th. I'm going to start becoming president right now. Well, that's arrogant at the very least. Okay, so you've been in government a long time. So you think you know what's going on, but you're not up to speed with what's going on. You need a transition so that you can get the right information. And in any case, both attitudes create this attitude, boy, I keep repeating myself, but this expectancy in the public that there's going to be a brawl no matter what, of some proportions. And what kind of leadership is that?
Right.
Why should we count on either one of these people? And then one of them has a VP candidate who says, and supposedly this was false, but I don't know,
Well, don't
says
say
they're going
anything.
to go out and kill everybody that supported the other guy. I'm like, okay, even if you said that as a joke, that's horribly irresponsible, because people out there are going to take it and run with it. So
But I think
we've never had, to my knowledge, we've never had candidates be so reckless in the past, and that scares me. That scares me.
But I think that in what you were saying, go back to what you were saying, because even though all that is what we're living in, all those scenarios are possible. The king rules, right? The
Yeah.
officer in charge, it trickles down. But who is our king? See, we're looking for man to be our king, but literally Jesus is the only king. He is the king of all kings, the Lord of all lords. So we have to, as Christians, and hopefully those, even if you're not a Christian right now, still look towards something that's bigger than these two gentlemen,
Yes.
bigger than
And
their campaigns, bigger than the news, because if we look to man, any man, as our authority, yes, we're going to trickle down that authority temperament.
when I was in the Air Force,
If we surpass, hold on a minute, David, if we surpass man and go to the King of Kings, the
Right.
Lord Jesus, then we have to, his character has to trickle down to us, you know? So
and that's
if
what I
we
wanted. What I wanted to echo for you. When I was in the Air Force, I guess it's safe to say it now, Nixon was president, and I didn't respect him at all. And I was only 17, but I respected the fact that he was president. I respected the fact that he held the reins, whether I liked it or not. So I focused on everything I could do to become the best Air Force officer I could, to serve the country the best way I could. And I just didn't worry about him. And I had to do that with a few officers too. So you're right. I skipped it up a notch or several, and realigned my thinking with what really mattered.
Yeah, I think the problem is same thing with what happened with COVID is happening with this election and politics is if you tune into the news and stay there, if you get into conflicts of conversation with people around you, it's going to make you bitter. You're going to change your character. You're going to be impacted in negative ways emotionally, which will then affect your lifestyle and those around you. But if you can keep your eyes on why you have been awakened every morning, that God has a purpose for you, that God has something for us to do, and we got to be Jesus's character. We can't become what the world is expecting and anticipating, what the news is shouting it's going to happen. We can't become that. And the only way to do that is to wake up in the morning, say, Lord, take over. My feelings want to lash out at people, want to say something, want to do something, but take over my character so that I can be love, kind, compassionate, and a vessel so that I can be a source of change in my area. So when people call me up and say, get out of there, it's fearful, I can put them at ease. I can put them at ease. I don't have to hear the fear and respond. I can have my own response that's downloaded from my King, which is, Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
And it's quiet. So, it's time for the show to end for tonight's session, our conversation. I do pray that as we have to look realistically at what is going on around us, what is happening in our election and voting process, that we can be guided this week to be different than what's expected. That even when that anger comes up, because let me tell you, there's no way to be around here and not have some anger or frustration at what is going on in our communities. The isolation is getting real, it's getting more. Now we have this on top of that. To go to bed on election night and not have a president is just, it's weird. It's different. It's like we know something's wrong. It's a miss. It's just one more thing. So I pray this week that we can refocus ourselves, and realize, like David said, it's going to trickle down. Who do we want to be when this process is happening? I don't want to be like Trump or Biden. I want to be like my King, Jesus. I pray that you all do too. So thank you for this conversation. Thank you those who joined us and watched and participated. Bonnie, we'll have to get you on next week. That was my mishap in not getting a time for her to come on with us today. But I thank her for chiming in. So if you want to know more about Truth to Hear or Truth Talk, you can go to www.truthtohear.org. All right. We look forward to hearing from you and see you next week. Thank you, Brandy. Thank you, David.
Bye.